Okay, this video is called Why Most People Never Get Better. And yes, I've made videos about this before, but I've had some new insights that I think I'm going to add to it to make it better. A lot of people get sent to me as, my friends come to me, they've got relatives, they've got friends, they come to me with all their problems. And these are people who are sent to me. Even when they know me, they still give me a lot of back talk and hassle. When I talk to a regular random patient, that person doesn't have any knowledge whatsoever of the low-fat vegan diet or any of this health stuff. So I'm not surprised that I would say at least 95% of them are not interested. Okay, they roll your eyes at you. They think you're being weird. What are you talking about? Nutrition, that's all BS. But what I'm trying to say is even people in my own family, people who've known me for decades, they freak out about nutrition. And they won't do it. They won't even try it. So that's one of the things that has pissed me off is that I'll have people who are easily curable. They've got obesity, hypertension, diabetes, coronary artery disease, and all the related problems. And they'll also get weird little things like back pain, neck pain, headaches. And what I tell them is, look, fix the diet, filter your water, improve your sleep habits. You have to first get that stuff right. You just increase the body's general ability to heal. The body heals based on every organ system needs good blood flow. What provides the best blood flow? A low-fat, low-sodium, 100% vegan diet with no oil, not one drop, no processed food, foods only with a single ingredient, no caffeine, okay? Optimizing your sleep, okay? Filtering your water. There's tons of toxins in regular tap water. There's typically aluminum, there's fluoride, there's glyphosate, there's excess chlorine, and then there's all these estrogenic chemicals and other toxins. So that's the basics. That's the minimum. You could view it as, let's say your body has 10 units of healing power every day to help you get better. So, and you've got 15 bad habits. Well, 5 of them are probably invisible. You can't figure out what they are, so you're not going to get all of them. But if you get rid of 10 of them, now you've taken yourself from 15 bad habits down to 5 bad habits. And some things you can't get rid of, okay? So, like maybe you live in an apartment building with Wi-Fi. You can't get rid of that, okay? So, if you can at least knock it down to 5 bad habits or units of sickness relative to 10 units of healing, then you've got 5 units of healing towards getting better. The more you optimize everything, the better it gets. And the reason why it's so smart to fix the diet first and filter the water is there's no side effects from these things. What I'm getting at is I'll have patients, they come to me and they think they've got an infection, sinusitis or a dental infection, and they'll say their face or their head hurts on the same side, and they think the infection is spreading to their face or their head. I'm just going to tell you, I've looked at over 100,000 sinus CTs with sinusitis. And yes, it can spread to the brain, but it almost never does. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, and then I'll take these people, they tell me they have an infection in their face, and when I examine them in person, I'll put gloves on, I'll pinch their face. They have no pain in their face. Okay? A real facial cellulitis, the patient wouldn't let you touch them. They'd be jumping off the table. So what I'm trying to say is these patients come to me and they're taking the most high-powered antibiotics you could imagine. They're on fluoroquinolones, they're on metronidazole, all these powerful antibiotics. They don't even start with something milder first like cephalosporin, like, Keflex or something, all right? And I'm like, do you understand? They don't want to do the diet, but they want to go on all these powerful antibiotics. I'm like, you don't understand. You're putting yourself at risk for, major disruption of your gut bacteria. Even potentially with some of these antibiotics, a Clostridium difficile pseudomembranous colitis, bad gut problems, okay? Antibiotics very often cause leaky gut. That's going to make your headaches worse. And they're like, well, I feel okay so far. And I'm like, that's fine, but you're accumulating damage to your gut bacteria the longer you stay on an antibiotic. And sometimes you need an antibiotic. You got a real infection. Fine. Confirm it first as best you can before you go on the antibiotics. They'll just start taking antibiotics when they don't even have any proven infection whatsoever. So what I'm trying to say is, you almost never can cure something with a pill. Don't get me wrong. Some antibiotics with some infections, they can save your life. They're a wonderful thing. But what I'm trying to say is the patients love taking pills. They love taking supplements. They love going for medical tests. Like, I can't tell you how many patients tell me, oh, I need this surgery. I need this surgery. They don't understand. Lots of people go for surgery and they get worse. Don't get me wrong, surgery is sometimes very helpful for some spine problems, for some abdominal problems, for some hernias. But a lot of people get worse. So you're taking a high risk when you jump into surgery. And maybe you need it, but you don't jump into it first. I can tell you, I've had family members and they'll have a spine problem. By the way, I'm like the best spine doctor in the whole world, okay? I've written 3 books on the spine. I ran a spinal injection clinic for many years. I've got experience with over 100,000 spine patients, okay? I tell you this because I've had friends and family, and they'll have a spine problem, a disc herniation or something. They'll ask my opinion. I'll tell them what to do, like the Gooby and Dooby MIT neurosurgeon. I tell them, low-fat vegan, avoid caffeine, avoid all these other things, get your sleep, etc. You can look that guy up, by the way. He's got a viral video. It's called, I was an MIT trained spine surgeon and now I'm alone in the mountains, something like that. His dogs are Gooby and Dooby, so he named his YouTube channel Gooby and Dooby. Last time I checked, he had over like 19 million views. Anyways, he noticed as a spine surgeon, his patients would get better faster if they would just eat a plant-based diet and walk every day and not smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol and get their sleep and manage their stress. He said that had better results than his spine surgery for many indications. All right, if you have a cord compression or something like that, you still need spine surgery, but that's quite rare. So anyways, an intelligent person, first of all, does all the things that help heal the disease that have no risk, and they're free. It is free to improve your diet. It is free. Well, it costs a little bit of money up front to filter your water, but you should do it anyway. So these are basically things that are free, and you do the rest of your life. All right, and what I'm trying to tell you is patients like, well, I got to get an MRI. I got to get a CAT scan. And I'm like, you know what? You don't cure a disease by taking a picture of it. Also, even if a correct early diagnosis is made, does conventional medicine have a treatment that works for it? A lot of patients go for all these CAT scans and MRIs and they find incidentalomas, which are basically normal variant things or things related to normal aging, and nobody knows at first if they're cancer. Then they get stuck in follow-ups for minimum of 2 years, sometimes for more than that, and that can cost them over $20,000. Okay, so the smart way to approach a disease is ask yourself, what disease do I have? What caused my disease? What can I do to get better? And you don't cure a disease by taking a picture of it. Sometimes you need a picture of it, a CAT scan, an MRI, an ultrasound, an X-ray to figure out what it is. Sometimes you do. Okay? All right. And what I'm trying to say is to patients going to the hospitals, like, the pilgrimage to Canterbury, they don't understand. It's more like, they think it's like the pilgrimage to Canterbury. It's more like Dante and Virgil in front of the gates of hell, where it says, abandon hope, all ye who enter. Conventional medicine has a 0% cure rate. That's 0% for obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and coronary artery disease. You can't cure a dietary disease with a pill, whereas the cure rate for those diseases is about 100%, close to it. If you catch it early enough, the longer the person has the disease, like if you got hypertension a couple decades, you're going to have calcified arteries, you're going to lose the Windkessel effect, and you might never be able to fully cure it. Same thing with diabetes. If you have it for over a decade, you might have destroyed your pancreas, and now you're insulin dependent because you don't have any beta cells in your pancreas. So that's why you want to reverse these diseases as fast as possible before you develop secondary damage that makes the disease incurable. You'll still improve by fixing your diet after you've reached the advanced stage. You just won't ever be fully cured. Okay? By cured, I mean that you no longer have to take any pills or get any more surgeries. You simply just eat the healthy diet. And yes, you do have to eat the diet, but that's what you're supposed to be eating anyways. Genesis 1:29, I put every plant on this earth to be food for you. And the same diet that improves blood flow, it also improves immune function, so you get a better chance of healing an infection or healing a wound. Okay? I'm going to go through some pictures here. So here's just showing the pilgrimage to Canterbury. Okay? Now here's a couple more comments on patients. Well, we kind of already covered that. Also get sunshine, get your exercise, your walking, avoid your stress, and avoid all these toxic things, alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, which means no coffee and no tea. That's all BS. Okay. And basically a simple way to think of it is imagine your body's like, a fancy car, but it's a car that you want to last your whole life. Let's say if you live a healthy life, you got a good chance to make it into your late 80s, maybe to 90, okay? So you need your car to last until 90 years. So if the owner's manual says put premium gas into it, you want to put premium gas into it. You don't want to put regular, okay? Processed food and oil and all this other junk, fast food, that's like putting the wrong gas in your car. That could mess it up, and it'll mess it up all over the place with weird little symptoms that are hard to explain. So don't do that. Put the right stuff in there, okay? And staying healthy is like Super Mario Brothers video game. Basically, you do the good stuff and you win energy points. You screw up and you lose energy points, okay? So what you want to do is do what's good and avoid what's bad. Then what that means is you got to know what's good for you and what's bad for you. So things that are bad for you, tons of medications have mitochondrial inhibition side effects. So you got to be real careful about what meds you take. Don't get me wrong, you might need some medications, but don't just randomly take them. A lot of common medications are inhibitors of mitochondria, including Tylenol, including statins, metformin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, etc. So be very careful what you take. They could potentially interfere with your athletic performance. For example, when I was a young guy in college, I was taking tetracycline antibiotic for my acne. If I had known then what I know now, that it's a mitochondrial inhibitor, I wouldn't have taken it. I don't know if that affected my athletic performance. Optimize your diet. We just talked about that. Okay, and do all the good things. Managing your stress, get along with people, helping other people, having a sense of purpose, and being religious. All of those things make a person more healthy. So you want to do those things for that reason as well as other reasons. The average person I meet, like the average guy I meet, is so unhealthy he doesn't even realize it. Most of the men I meet are overweight or fat, and they'll have a big belly and they'll joke, oh, it's just a beer belly. No, it's not, you dummy. It's like an estrogen belly. The vast majority of men in the Western world are estrogen overloaded because there's a lot of estrogenic chemicals in fast food, in processed food, in tap water, in personal care products, from plastics, and they often have little boobs on their chest. The men do. We call them moobs, which means man boobs. For gynecomastia is the medical term for that. And the average patient has zero chance of a cure because they're not willing to change your diet. Well, if you're not willing to improve your diet and you have a dietary caused disease, how are you going to get better? Your cure rate is zero. You can't cure this disease with a pill. Here's a normal looking brain. Small ventricles, intact brain parenchyma, tight up against the skull. This is a brain MRI flare sequence. It's really like a T2 CSF suppression, fluid suppression sequence. Anyways, here's a typical 70 plus year old patient in the Western world. A bunch of small strokes in the periventricular regions, prominence of the sulci with cerebral spinal fluid sort of entering into the brain crevices because of atrophy of the brain. I see this stuff all day long, every day. Here's basic life curves. If you eat, low-fat, plant-based, whole foods, organic only, you got a good chance to make it to 90, and you don't have to be 100% vegan. Ideally, 100% vegan, you can take a B12 supplement. That's the only supplement you need to take, but you should be at least 90% vegan, okay? Mediterranean diet, is really kind of a very vague term. There's a lot of, the only thing it really forbids is processed food, and there is a plant-based Mediterranean diet that's often recommended by the high-fat phonies. And that'll get you to live longer than the SAD diet, standard American diet. Standard American diet patients, often crash out in their 60s, and they're fat, sick, and stupid by their 50s quite often, mid-50s. Okay, so there's your best chance to get a longer life. Some of it's genetic, of course, but you optimize what you can. You eat a starch, which is basically a polymer of glucose wrapped in fiber. It takes time for the stomach to remove the fiber and the intestinal tract, small bowel as well, so the glucose is slowly absorbed. Your blood glucose curve comes up relatively gradually, stays relatively normal a prolonged amount of time. If you just have sweets, simple sugars, you spike your blood glucose too rapidly, pancreas overcompensates, drives your sugar down. That's rebound hypoglycemia. It's a very common problem. Okay, and if you eat fat, there's all kinds of other problems with fat. We're not going to get into that right now. So like I said, this green line is from eating starch. Starch is things like rice, beans, potatoes, sweet potatoes, quinoa, oatmeal, barley, millet, wheat, all that kind of stuff. That tends to be the optimal food for the majority of your calories. You get a little spike in your blood glucose, which is normal after you eat, but you stay relatively normal a prolonged amount of time. It's the best blood glucose curve. If you eat fat, the fat causes insulin resistance, and that leads to what's called carbohydrate intolerance, and you get prolonged high blood glucose levels after eating. Prandial means eating, so postprandial. Sweets, we just talked about that, rebound hypoglycemia, so you don't want that. The problem with conventional medicine is conventional medicine has its primary focus on making money. So they're always looking for some way to sell a drug or sell a surgery or sell a blood test or an imaging test. And they try to blame everything on aging, genetics, or viruses, which you really can't do much about, and therefore you have to take their pill or go for their surgery. And this is called the lamppost fallacy. They only look in the spot that's easy to look. The medical research labs at the universities are designed for that. They don't look at all the stuff that really matters the most for the vast majority of people, because they don't know how to make money off it, okay? But the problem is that makes them less able to cure you. And then you say, well, there'll be some, organization that's going to protect you. Yeah, right. Nobody cares about poor people, okay? All these organizations, big corporations, you can pay them off pretty easily. Now, the other thing, too, is an illness often doesn't come from one cause. It often is multifactorial. So the most powerful thing is usually to optimize diet and filter your water, but you want to do as many things correctly as you can. Get your sunshine, get your sleep, manage your stress, have a strong sense of purpose, be religious, okay? Avoid all these toxins. So you want to do everything you can good that's going to optimize your health and help you to heal, and avoid everything bad that's going to hurt you. And the more you learn about it, you're gonna change like 20 habits, not just 2 or 3. And the net result is you got a much, much better chance of getting better. Plus, the older you get, the more fragile you get. I already talked about how there's lots of mitochondrial inhibitors. Excess dietary fat also ends up having an inhibitory effect on mitochondria. So you don't want that, okay? There's a lot of mitochondrial inhibitors in non-organic foods, so you want to eat organic, for example. Okay, and then this is kind of how it works. You eat the healthy diet, and the Johnson will work longer. You can avoid pills and surgeries. I'm 63 years old. I've never had a surgery. I don't take any pills. Okay, the only supplement I take is a vitamin B12, very, very, very minimal amounts. I take it about once every couple of months, and it's a real minimal amount. I'm not even sure I need to take it, but I still do in minimal amounts. Vitamin B12 is a real complex topic because there's so much corporate, stuff in the literature. It's hard to sort out what's real and what's just corporate advertising. So in the future, I'll put more time into studying that. But the people who go down the standard American route of eating these lousy processed food, fast food, fried food diets with lots of meat and dairy, they're fat, sick, and stupid typically by 55, 60 years of age, on a bunch of pills, and the pills don't work. They go for surgery eventually. It costs them tons of money, and they die prematurely. That's what usually happens to them. So you don't want to go down that path of the typical idiot. Here's just a little more detail added to it that, in addition to eating a healthy diet, you want to avoid toxins. You want to decrease your EMF. Get your sunshine. Get your exercise. Do all the social stuff. Get along with people. Have a sense of purpose. Be religious. Okay, get your sleep. And that's God's way, and that's free. Okay, it's free, and it usually works. It provides the best possible outcomes. Man ways is expensive, but 99.9% of people choose man's way. Okay, I'm trying to follow God's way because I know it works better. But like I said, 99.9% of people, they're going to take man's way, and they often end up disappointed. Okay, here's basically a pretty simple pyramid. This is the Spartan vegan pyramid. And, there's the stuff at the bottom line, social stuff. Get along with your friends and family and your coworkers. Get your exercise, sunshine, sleep, and be religious. Okay, then the base of the pyramid is starches. I eat about 60% of my calories from starches. Dr. McDougall would recommend eat 90% of your calories from starches, and he would say 5% fruits, 5% veggies. I probably eat about 35% fruits, 5% veggies. If you exercise a lot and you're healthy, you can do that. He's more addressing his 90% starch recommendation to old people who are real sick and they don't know what to do. They don't know anything about nutrition. They just want to get better fast. And that's a simple way to do it. And if you ask McDougall, why do you believe in that 90% starch routine? He'll tell you, because that's how all healthy populations eat. Since the beginning of recorded history, all the large healthy populations have ate the vast majority of their calories from starches. And they're healthy populations subsisting primarily on potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, beans, corn, etc. But it has to be organic corn. And non-organic corn has bad stuff sprayed on it like atrazine. Okay, there's lots of things that increase. There's lots of people on stimulants. We talked about caffeine, some medications. EMF is a stimulant in a sense. It opens up voltage-gated calcium channels. Being stressed out is that anything that smells bad tends to be a SERCA inhibitor, which leads to the same thing, increased cytoplasm calcium. SERCA means sarcoplasm endoplasmic reticulum calcium ATPase, okay, which is really the endoplasmic reticulum in your brain cells. Okay, so it's just a calcium reservoir. That's why it's relevant. I talked about mitochondria inhibitors. If you don't have ATP energy, you can't pump the calcium out of the cell, and you end up with a high cytoplasmic calcium, and you overactivate your brain cells. It basically has a stimulant effect, and that can make you anxious, that can make you depressed, it can give you insomnia so you can't sleep. Tons of people are doing that. Okay. And then just, all the epidemiology shows, these people, these backward third world savages, eating plant-based food, they don't have any hypertension, they don't have any diabetes. It doesn't matter where they are. As long as they eat plant foods, they don't get the common Western diseases. And the common Western pattern enables you to prevent enables you to prevent infections, better sanitation. So you're most likely going to be healthy. That's what you want. Social support's a big deal, like this painting, The Filial Piety, the Paralytic, by Jean Grousse from 1763. Basically, this old guy, he's paralyzed. He would be dead, except the family takes care of him. So what I'm trying to say is social support really helps people a lot. It's like the Rosetto effect, the town of Italians in the 1950s and 60s, where they all had extended families. They were a lot healthier than demographically aged populations who didn't have the same social support system as them. Okay, and why do I believe in God? I made an entire video about why I believe in God, and I can tell you all the scientific data points to people should believe in God. It's the only thing that can explain creation. Departure of the Knights. This is the old chivalry. Man and women should get along and help each other. They're complementary. I'm not going to go into all that right now. Little calcium physiology stuff. I talked about that in my other lecture, so I won't show it. But basically, you want to, you're like playing a game. Like they got a little hole in the bottom of the boat, so they're bailing the buckets out. And that's the way it is for life, to keep life alive. So you want to stay way ahead of the game by having good habits so the boat doesn't sink, because that's what happens to neurons. And it's like Genesis 1:29. God said, I have put all these plants on the earth, they shall be food for you. So what you want to do is live like Adam and Eve, keep your indoor heating and plumbing, and be intelligent. Fix the easy stuff that you can do free for first with no side effects. Optimize your diet to low-fat vegan, no oil, organic only, whole foods only, single ingredient foods only. Optimize your sleep, filter your water, okay? Get your exercise, manage your stress, be religious, help other people, because it helps you too, puts you in a better mood. When you do those things, you dramatically increase your capacity to heal and get your sunshine, and it improves mitochondrial function and helps set your circadian rhythms. It makes you look better, improves your mood. So when you do all those things, you now have a dramatically increased capacity to heal. And you have to stick with it for a couple of months. You're not going to heal in one day. It takes 7 days to clear out whatever's in your colon and whatever problems it's causing, okay? And it's going to take, like 7 weeks before you're going to notice a significant difference in a lot of different things. You got to give it a try. Try it at least 3 months. See how it's going. Make the transition kind of gradual. You will have the farts, for example. There's going to be a turf war in your gut between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. The good bacteria feed on the fiber, which comes from eating the plant foods. The bad bacteria feed on the processed food and stuff. So once you eat only a healthy food, then the good bacteria just have total control, and there's no longer a turf war in your gut. You'll be a lot less likely to have bloating or the farts or discomfort. I think that's the last slide there. Yeah, so anyways, that's why most people don't get better, because they're not willing to try the stuff that's free and is most powerful. Low-fat vegan diet, filtering the water, and all this lifestyle, sleep, sunshine, exercise, stress reduction stuff. And then after that, if you're not better, then you start looking for, all the fancy imaging and expensive stuff. Maybe have to take a pill or something or go for surgery. But I wouldn't jump to that unless you have a uniquely surgical indication or an obvious infection. So anyways, I hope you found that helpful.